told.
Welcome back to the Jesus Magnet Podcast. I'm your host, Joel, and we have made it to wonderful Tauranga, and we're staying at Faith Bible College. Today we're joined with Jono Hill. How you doing, Jono?
Yeah, I'm doing well today, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, it's an honour. It was awesome actually meeting you today at YWAM and Faith Bible College. Sort of like squished together this campus, isn't it? And I shouldn't really say squished because it's an enormous campus.
Yeah, it's been, I was here a couple of years ago doing a school, and I'm just back up from Wellington, where you've just come from as well.
True.
Just visiting some of the people that I know here while I'm back.
Awesome. So I'm excited to hear your story because I've heard a little bit about what you're doing now, but I'm not going to spoil that until later on in the podcast episode. So, Jono, have you always been a Christian?
No, I grew up in a Christian family. Like, we always went to a Baptist church back home. My parents are still there at the same church to this day.
In Wellington?
Yeah, in Wellington, Newlands Baptist Church.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I just spoke there last weekend, just sharing a lot of like my story and stuff.
Very cool. Very cool.
Today.
So, when you say no, you haven't always been a Christian, at what point did you decide to follow Christ?
It basically came down to like one day, I'm a carpenter by trade, and, I pretty much had it made. I had a good job, earning good money, good family, good friends and things like that. But the whole kind of like worldly idea of getting a mortgage and getting a house and stuff like that just like killed me inside, and like with that I was struggling with depression and stuff at the time from past broken relationship and stuff like that. And it came to a point one day where I was just like, Lord, like these things I read in the Bible, these stories I hear about, like, do these things still happen? Like, are you worth like following in this life? Because at the moment, like I just don't see much point to it.
Jono, you raise a good point regarding like mortgages and all the different relationships that the world pushes on us. Sometimes it's like every time that happens, it's like another weight that we have to carry. And I stand here now knowing I don't know how people can do it without Christ, because the world throws a lot of baggage at you.
Oh, yeah.
It really does.
Yeah, especially these days where it's like, you're surrounded by it, whether it be like social media, news, family pressures, friend pressures, social status, it's just like, yeah, I have a lot of non-Christian friends and stuff like that do well. But like, I kind of like sometimes see their struggles and stuff, and like, walking in the freedom that I found in Christ is just like, it's just unbelievable.
It's true. I really do feel sorry for kids, not only at primary school, but definitely at high school. The amount of pressure that is on them today to get A's and to be excellence kids and to be able to get into that school and different things like that. It is unreal how much pressure that people have at that young age that isn't really applicable later on in life, that same kind of pressure.
Yeah, like there feels like there's no real room for like error almost, like where's the room for mistakes these days?
Yeah. Because
you come down, I'm 8 years out of school now pretty much, and it's, it's impossible for me, not impossible because nothing's impossible with God, but like
preach it.
with the status quo, it's impossible to get into the housing market unless you have some help.
That's true.
In some way, and let alone like, if you fail at a job or fail at a life direction choice, it can be pretty brutal by the people that might surround you. So
it's true. Is that partly why you went into the building trade, to make the whole getting the house a bit easier, being able to build it yourself?
Yeah, partly there. I think like,
or you're taking the walk like Jesus did to a whole new level and being a carpenter.
Definitely there. I love when I travel around the world and share like what I used to do. I definitely use that to my advantage, that I'm a little bit more like Jesus than others, even though that's not true. But very much so. Like, I was always a hands-on kind of person, loved working on cars and building things, and so like I did toss up university for sure, like and that's kind of like popped back into my head here and there now that I'm older, and you know I know what I'd be getting myself into, rather than actually like doing it out of obligation. But yeah, like the building sector for me was just like something free to me, that was a challenge for me, as well as, you know, the Lord kind of basically, not that I was always following him at the time, those things just fell into place for me.
So those pressures that you're talking about, the you know, social status, career, relationships, all of that, you know, huge decisions to make growing up, is that what sort of brought you into following Christ and following, like going, man, this is actually too heavy for me? And is that the sort of the, I guess, indicator, the, what do you call it, you know, the...
Kind of like prompting almost.
Yeah, it's when the degree changes, you know, like you were going down one path and it was just getting heavier and heavier, and you're going, man, something's got to change. I got to think slightly differently.
Yeah.
There's got to be some help somewhere. Like you said, you know, like even getting a mortgage is impossible without help these days because they're just huge. And when you're thinking of all these things that are piling up, probably causing anxiety. I mean, they absolutely do with millions of people around the world. That you go, man, what do I need? I need somebody to help me. Yeah. And that always, I mean, obviously anybody listening to this podcast, that's Jesus. Oh yeah, like I think that's such a true thing. I think in regard, a lot of the time I'm lucky because I kind of, in a sense, realized it so early that, you know, I didn't ending up and trying so many different things to try and find purpose, to try and find, you know, myself, so to speak, or find my identity in something. Like, you know, like during building, you know, I was really good at my job. You know, I built houses of the year and things like that in Wellington region, and like that was really cool. But at the end of it, it still was just like, to me, it was like, oh, that's just another thing I did. And so that very much brought about the, you know, like, surely there must be just more to this life than what I'm currently doing. Yeah, absolutely. So obviously growing up in Wellington, you had all these not anxieties, but all these things piling up, which would eventually cause anxiety, which do a huge amount of people around the world. Tell me a little bit more about your family, though. So you got two parents, like most of us do, and
younger brother and younger sister.
Oh, oldest of three.
Yeah.
Awesome. Most responsibility on the oldest.
Yeah, got away with the least. Because it's like almost like you're like the trial child. Cause
you fully are. They're like pancakes.
Yeah.
You know, the first pancake that you make is normally pretty rough, not quite round, a couple of lumps in it. But the more you do them, the better they get.
Yeah.
I only say that because I'm the youngest.
Yeah. Well, it's probably, I would say like they throw away all the first batches until they get the first one perfect. And then once the first one's perfect, you know, you're like, oh, we can kind of loosen up on the rest of them now that we've got it perfected.
I'd say there's a lot of truth to that. Oh, awesome. So, let's go back to your faith journey, if we want to put it that way.
Yeah.
So you grew up in church. You're the oldest of three, loving family, and you're always going to church with your family.
Not always. Like I kind of dropped away. Like my parents always supportive of what us kids did and the choices that we would make, and they very much knew that we had to figure out what life was for ourselves, and you know, they best guided us the way they could. You know, no parents are perfect, but mine are amazing and still support me to this day with what I do. But yeah, there were a couple years in my like very early 20s, 21, 22, where I was kind of just off doing my own thing, you know, having a taste of the world and what it had to offer. Did
you, when you say taste of the world, what is that? What are you talking about?
Like going out and drinking and partying and just, you know, not hanging out in the right crowds and stuff like that.
So had you been born again at this point?
No.
So you had been going to church.
Yeah.
You knew that God existed, that sort of thing. So you never denied that?
No.
Oh,
I never denied that.
That's funny because I sort of walked in those same tracks almost exactly. But I'll warn you, that's how I met my wife. So I'm not promoting that, by the way, for anybody listening. But yeah, just that God sort of, he knows what he's doing as well.
He's sovereign.
Yeah, absolutely. So at which point did you go, this, the world can't sate everything that I want. There's still something missing, that God-shaped hole in your life?
Yeah, I really think it was like him truly like pulling me out of the pit that I was in, because one day I just reached out to my mate that I'd grown up in church with for years, and I was just like, hey man, can I come to church? Because he was at a new church at this stage, and he was like, yeah man, like I'd love for you to come along. And
wow,
it kind of, just felt like going back that time first, and would have been a couple years, just like felt like coming like back home basically. You can,
wow,
I guess you could fit me into like the kind of prodigal son story.
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
you want. And yeah, it really felt like that. But as well as still, I had this like hunger for more of what God could be in my life, for sure.
More than just, I'm going to go to church now.
Yeah.
I want to go to that next step.
Like really making it like a personal relationship.
Yeah.
And like discovering what that actually meant.
Cool. So your friend who brought you back to church, did he walk you through going through that personal relationship, or is that something that your parents had installed in you from a younger age?
I don't think it was really.
Or was
either.
it the church? Or
it wasn't kind of like either. I definitely like started a few things for sure, being back at church, and like being back in those circles where you're surrounded with those people like living out that life as examples. And so you kind of like start to pick at those things and kind of go like, okay, Lord, like they're doing this, like how does that work in my life? And it's kind of like, a test of trial and error, like one of a school that I went to, Bethel school that I went to earlier last year, was kind of like, whatever you learn, take it, and then whatever experience you have with God, then go look in the Bible where it is biblically based, if it is Him. Because sometimes a lot of the time we're like, right, learn as much theology or learn as much about the Bible as you can, and then you can go out and do these things, which I think like there's truth to that for sure, but as well as like, a lot of our relationship is built through experience and experiences with God.
I would agree with that. You said earlier, you wanted to build that relationship with God, and that was one of when you came back to Christ, that was what you started to dwell on. When I think of it, I always think of that relationship with God. When you first come back to God, or the first time you are saved, and it's not that that's the end, cool, free ticket to heaven. It's now got this relationship that needs to be put into practice. This relationship that needs, tended to, back and forth. It's not just God telling me what to do and me doing it, and it's not me telling God what to do, which a lot of the time when we pray, isn't it? Lord, I need strength. Lord, I need wisdom. Lord, I need this miracle in my life, and almost like ordering around the king.
Yeah.
But it's, Lord, what do you need me to do? And it's waiting and listening and going, okay, I'm gonna just rest in this and wait for that answer, and actually be obedient when I hear that answer, when I hear that call on my life. I put a lot of the comparison on this is in marriage, especially in my life. There's no way I would still be married if I just told my wonderful wife what to do all the time.
What you needed.
And what I needed. And I never asked her, what can I do for you, honey? Wouldn't be a very good marriage.
Yeah,
and it wouldn't build very far, and it wouldn't be very deep. It would be extremely shallow. And I tell you, I'd be miserable. And it wouldn't really even look like I was married, to be fair. It wouldn't look like a relationship at all. It would look like almost like a hierarchy system of, somebody giving the orders and the servants doing the orders. That's not what this whole thing is. It's us working in unity with Christ and Him telling us what to do and us doing it, and then us asking what He could help us with, and Him doing that the same way that a husband loves the wife. So you obviously went down that path, and you're
and I was asking
eternally doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's basically what brought me to YWAM.
Yeah.
Like I remember a seed, like, looking back now, I like see that seed that was sown by the Lord by a YWAM team that visited our church when I was like 17.
Come on.
And so, we're talking about like 5 years later that I'm like, that this is coming to mind. And then another one of my friends who he was thinking the same thing about going to YWAM, and we just caught up one day, and I was like, "Oh, you're thinking about it, so am I." And so, we could kind of both take confirmation that there was something in that for both of us. We ended up doing different schools in Hawaii, Kona, which is like the mothership of YWAM. But yeah, he did his 3 months starting before mine, and that was truly like the turning point of my life and my Christian faith, where it became from something where it was religious, like this is what you do because the Bible says it, to this is what you get to do with God.
Come on, I love that. Just for anybody listening that is unaware what YWAM stands for, it's an acronym for Youth with a Mission, which is a huge organization, Christian organization, where youth and, any age really, are trained up in the faith for 2 or 3 months, 2.5 months, I think it is. Yeah. And then they get sent out to a different area, different nation, different culture, and they actually put into practice what they've been learning, and they go and evangelize, and they do teachings, and they build houses, and they do lots of different things. And they're an amazing organization. Get into it if you feel like God wants you to do something. I really don't think you can go wrong with YWAM.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you think about it, it's 2.5 months of like learning about God, learning like your identity and what it means to be created in the image of Him, all the authority that you gain through being a son. Like you learn what the gifts of the Spirit are, you learn what the fruits of the Spirit are, and then you get to put them into practice. Like I went to South Africa, Cape Town, for 2.5 months. And that was just extraordinary, being out on the streets.
That's where you went for your outreach
part? Yeah.
Okay, so you did Kona, Hawaii for your lecture phase.
Yeah.
The first 2.5 months, and then you were flown off to South
the other
Africa.
Side of the world. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, awesome. And so that's where it became very much real, because you're like missions, a lot of people think it's like super structured. And it's like, yes, it is to a point, but once you're out there, like I kind of have this saying now that I've been on like 3 or 4 missions trips, some of them like my own ones, where it's like if it's going wrong, it's going right, in the sense of like if you had like
on that a wee bit.
So like you can plan a missions trip, like we're gonna like go here for this many days and like build this house or serve this church or pray with these people. We need to catch like this bus, this train, and things like that. Like you can pre-plan that for sure, and there is wisdom in planning. But as well as like, what happens if one of those things don't work out? Like you miss a bus, you miss a train. Like how are you going to react in that situation? And like so many times, like those things happen. It's because God wants you to like pay attention to what He's doing. Yeah, so whether it's like the person next to you, or whether like you end up catching another bus and there's a person that He wants you to go talk to about Him or pray with them for that day. Like I've, I could tell you millions of stories about how that's happened.
I can adhere to that. Just over the last month or so, we've been stranded in Wellington because things didn't go to plan. Our car broke down, so we had this whole plan, get to Wellington, go around the South Island, stay in Wellington for 4 or 5 days, get to Wellington, car breaks down, we're there for 6 weeks. But through being there, we managed to find different people all around Wellington, and particularly got invited to go to a conference with World Outreach, which is now directing where we think the Lord wants to take us, which we wouldn't have seen any of that without being stranded. So, yeah, God, there's the scripture in the Bible, God can use all things for good for those who love Him. And it couldn't be truer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So what is one of the most defining moments that you had in YWAM?
I think in this moment sticks with me, and God's kind of replicated it throughout the places that I visited in the world. And it's like, New Zealand is a very small niche place. When you start to travel around the world, you realize like how small we are as a people, but as well as like how like well known we are for the things that we produce, whether that be film and just friendliness and everything like that. But I remember we were doing train ministry one day in South Africa, and I sat down next to a guy one day, and it's kind of funny because you almost like trap people in a sense.
Train ministry?
Yeah. So we jump on the trains in South Africa, in Cape Town, which is like kind of known to be quite dangerous.
You jump inside the trains though, right? Not on the trains.
Oh yeah, I guess it's not quite India.
Okay, just making sure, because you said because it's known to be quite dangerous. And
yeah, true. I see where you're going.
On the train?
Yeah. No, we'd jump inside the trains, and we'd start ministering to people. And so I ended up sitting next to this one dude, and we ended up chatting for 40 minutes. I remember, because a lot of the people in South Africa was 50% unemployment rate. A lot of people looking for jobs and just opportunities. And so he'd come down from one of the more central African countries to find work. And so I was chatting to him, and he said, like, at the end of our talk, he was just like, oh, wow, I really do believe that God is real and sees me, because he sent you from the other side of the world to come talk to me today and pray with me today.
Come on.
And so, this has happened to me. I was earlier this year in Ukraine during the war that had broken out, and we were in a place called Ternopil, not Chernobyl, but Ternopil, which is about 3.5 hours from the border. And it was like same again, time and time again, we'd go out in the streets and, just see who the Lord highlighted to us and go start chatting to them and praying and sharing who Jesus was. And they're like, wow, thank you so much for being here. I really see that God cares about us and sees us during this time that we're in. And that's kind of like a huge part of my heart, is we carry so much of God's love with us when we're willing to go to places that most people would never think we would go to.
When you say the Lord highlighted somebody to you, or you'd pray, Lord, highlight somebody.
Yeah.
What does that mean in not Christianese?
I think it's, when you're walking down the street and you kind of just notice someone a bit more than you would notice regularly, or you kind of have a more kind of a longer thought about them. And then usually you would take this and be like, okay, God, is this someone you want me to speak to? And sometimes you would get an answer, sometimes you wouldn't. But we were kind of taught, if it's kind of taken up that much of your time and your mind, what's the worst that's going to happen if you go up to this person and kind of talk to them, basically?
What's the worst thing that can happen if you say, hey, you know that Jesus loves you? The worst thing that happens is, I don't know, they don't hear you. The best thing that happens is they hear that Jesus loves them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool. So you were doing train ministry in South Africa. Because what you're doing now is going into different places and ministering right now. Yeah. So you've not only done these couple of months with YWAM, you've gone out and gone to the next part of the phase of that, I suppose, that God's called you out of YWAM to do ministry elsewhere. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so our ministry is called Oceans Deep Ministries. And
Oceans Deep.
Yeah,
cool.
And there's 4 of us that head it, and we're based in Texas. So there's myself, my friend that I did YWAM with and my DTS school with, Caitlin, her cousin Paige, and another one of our friends, Melody.
Come on.
And so it's really a move of God how we all ended up starting a ministry together. I pretty much was finishing up work here as a carpenter. My health wasn't going too well with my lower back and stuff, just because building's tough on your body.
Yeah.
But I was too stubborn to leave otherwise, because I love my job. I love teaching and things like that. Yeah. But basically, he kind of, I guess in his own way, got me out of that. And then I was kind of looking for what's next, because the offer hadn't come up yet to go start a ministry. Because moving your life to the US is nothing simple, especially with visas and stuff. But yeah, basically one day, my friend, she offered hey, we've been chatting a bit about the churches of Revelation and stuff like that, and God's had it both on our hearts as well as some others. Do you want to start a ministry out here? And basically it was born on the kind of foundation of unity amongst diversity. And it basically started off with the churches of Revelation, where it was hey, you guys do this really well, but you're not so great here. Mm-hmm. And another church was hey, you guys do this really well, but not so great here. And so we were okay, it got us thinking how can we then take people out on whether they'd be missions trips, whether they'd be serving their communities, and learning from like different cultures, different denominations, different things where it's like, that whole iron sharpens iron thing, and like just continue to grow in what the Lord has for our personal lives as well as like the communities that we live in. Like for instance, Hispanic people do family really well, like same as like the islands out here, the islander culture that we have out here and things like that. They all like very joyful, very happy. Whereas, like most of us Westerners, we do very much like organizational things very well and stuff like that. So it's like, how can we take aspects of this? Because, God's not just the God of like the West, like our way isn't like the be all end all the right way. Like, God is the same God all around the world, and all these different cultures, like, show their worship in different ways.
Yeah.
And it's like, right, how can we take aspects of this and see where it is in the Bible and actually like culminate something that's just really beautiful. And so that's kind of like where the idea was born out of. And so my heart for ministry is, take kind of business leaders, community leaders that want to make a change in their community or business.
That is incredible, with where God's been taking you over the last year, 2 years? How old is this ministry?
Yeah. 18 months.
18 months. Awesome. And is that straight out of YWAM? Because you said that you were taken out of your job because you're back?
Yeah, so I did YWAM 2018 July, and so that was that 6 months.
Yeah.
And then I went back to working in my carpentry building role for another 2 years until I like phased myself out.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit and things like that. And the timing of it was like, obviously the world was at a shaky time, but for me it worked out kind of like perfectly in God's timing.
Totally.
And then, January 2021 is when I left my life here in New Zealand and travelled across the biggest ocean.
What a weird time to leave.
Yeah, well, I kind of lucked out. Like I got really lucky in the fact that, we only had our 4 week lockdown at the start. And then by the time I was in Texas, like February, March, April, they were starting to get rid of all their restrictions. So
wow.
Yeah.
So you only had the 3 weeks in lockdown.
Yeah. Although I did have a week in Germany when I came down with COVID.
Right, okay. So, this ministry sounds awesome. So it's obviously not like a little branch off YWAM. And you've got all these different people that are involved. The guy that you were friends with you did YWAM together, or he was 3 months before you.
Yeah.
So he's partnered with you in this.
No, he's down in he's still down in Wellington.
Oh, he's in Wellington.
Yeah, so I'm the only Kiwi in the ministry. The rest of them are Texans.
Yeah, cool.
Things like that. Yeah.
Awesome. So where do you see Oceans Deep going?
Well, a lot of it is just basically like just having open hands and letting the Lord guide us. Like the whole first year was basically just us building the foundational values, us team building, and just really like open hands with what God wanted it to be. So we ended up transitioning like from starting off being based on the books or the letters to the church in Revelation, and we came to Ephesians where it talks about fivefold ministries and things like that. And so, my arm is very much like pastoral, looking after people. That's my heart, helping people. One of the girls is prophetic worship. That's her kind of area. One of the other girls is teaching. She has her background in anthropology, which is study of old dead things, which is quite interesting when she starts talking about how she sees Jesus and a lot of creation and things like that. And you're just like, and like the cultures of, like the Mayan people she studied and stuff like that and things like that. It's like, you never, like, God's depth is just incredible.
Absolutely.
Start going into that stuff. And then
come on,
one of the other girls is apostolic and just like very entrepreneurial and things like that. So, and then out of that, so we all run like our different missions out of that. And so mine's very much like practically helping people, but as well as like not missing God's heart for the people, which, a lot of these missions trips that people do are very practical base, which is fine. It's all and well. But as well as like a lot of the times when people come back, I do debriefs with them and said like, what would you wanted more of while you're over there? And they were like, oh, we would have really liked to have spent more time talking to the people, fellowshipping with the people.
You take a group of people in the States to these different missions.
Yeah.
So they sort of sign up to be part of Oceans Deep in short-term mission trips, couple of weeks.
Usually 2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we haven't quite reached that stage. Like my trip earlier this year to like Ukraine and Poland and Germany was a pioneering trip for myself and my teammate Paige. And so that was kind of like continuing with God and building the structure of how we want to develop our missions in the future.
Very cool. Wow. I think that's really neat. I mean, so many people just start like another YWAM base or something like that. You guys have gone out and done something totally unique. That's just you guys. I really like the idea of the short-term missions because many people that I've come across, I said, man, you should go do YWAM. And they go, I don't have 5 months. I don't have 6 months, 5 months or whatever it is.
15 grand.
Yeah, and a huge amount of money to drop on it. And, I mean, to be fair, I always make the argument with the 15 grand or whatever it is.
God comes through.
But how much money would you spend over 6 months? It's probably about 15 grand as well. You know what I mean? Like the same amount would be used normally in life as going and doing YWAM. So you normally, most people can do it. But the other thing is you're fitting a gap when somebody says, look, I would love to do something like that. I actually just can't get away for that long. How about a couple of weeks? A
lot of people that like, especially in America, like they don't have standardized leave like we do in New Zealand and such like that, like, so their breaks are like kind of max that they can take around Christmas or max that they can 2 weeks around summertime.
Were you impacted when you went to Ukraine by the war that's going on?
It was like, often we go on mission trips to serve, and, God does use us, but I think a huge thing that you find out if you do a YWAM school or any mission school is that like so much inside of you changes through God revealing just so many different aspects of his heart for people. You experience hospitality that you would never experience in other places in the world. These people that come from next to nothing because they've had to leave their homes, they've had to leave everything behind, or they're just in poverty, where they open up their home to you. They will legitimately like kill their last like chicken in the backyard to feed you guys and stuff like that. It's just like astounding. It very much puts into perspective like the whole like woman at the well bringing like her last kind of few coins and like she gave out of everything. The 2
pence, yeah. There's somebody in poverty in the biblically, and how God comes through even when they're so hospitable to the man of God, which was you. So even though you're coming to their house and they're slaughtering that last chicken or whatever it is, that God comes through, can come through, and you just don't know how much blessing is after you left.
Yeah.
That, I don't know, 6 chickens just ran out from under the house that they didn't know that they had these little tiny chicks or something like that. Or a goat falls from the sky or something, that, and God just comes through and just goes, look, you looked after the man of God. Boom, here you go. And this blessing just pours through. But next time you go there, these people are going to go, hey, all of this stuff happened after you left.
Yeah.
It's nuts. I've heard it a lot. That's cool. So it's a fresh ministry. How do you guys fund a fresh ministry? Is that all self-funded from any businesses, or is it from people helping you going, look, we believe in this?
Yeah, it's part of everything, but it really is just trusting that God will come in faithfully.
Yeah.
Like there are some weeks where we're like, down to a couple $100 in our
no one's got anything.
Yeah. And we're just like, there's the standard outgoing bills of like just whatever, and it's like, we don't know how we're going to survive next month, but, God, you started this ministry with us here, so we're trusting that either A, you're going to give us the ability to like come up with something, or you're going to come through. And so,
do you find it easier to believe in God, like to trust in God, when you have to constantly trust in Him? doing something like this?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think,
yeah, I mean, like a lot of us with jobs, you know, there's less chances that we have to trust in God because we provide for everything more or less, you know. But then when you've got only a couple of $100 left in the ministry account, it only has to come from faith.
I think that's, you know, like I'll kind of answer that question with a story, and it's, you know, I was in Moldova December last year on a Christmas missions trip, and you know, if you don't know where Moldova is, it's like just west of Ukraine, you know, and it is the poorest European country, you know, ex-USSR, 3 million people, like, and so these people there, like, they had to trust that God was going to come through for their next meal. They had to trust that, you know, they were going to have a job the next day. And so I think, you know, their relationship with the Lord becomes so real to them each and every day that, you know, it is like, I truly do believe, like, the more you rely and lean into the Lord, the more he's going to move. And, like, you know, whether they be in small things or big things, you know, I think God is always like when we have a job and stuff like that in New Zealand, you know, like I was earning $2,000 a week at my job and stuff like that, like, $2,000 every 2 weeks. And it's like, you don't really need to rely on God physically to come through, you know, like, but when, you know, you're coming down to your last meal and stuff like that, like there was a month where I was down to like my last $60 in America because I'm support based. And I was just like, Lord, I got stuff that that are outgoings next week. And I'm in a country where I'm not allowed to earn money due to my visa and stuff like that. And, you know, it's like, I need to come through and I'm going to trust. And that was very much like a thing where they're like, that's a journey you have to go through with God. And it takes some people less time. It takes some people longer.
It's a dependent heart that you develop.
Yeah.
The Bible talks about in prayer crying out, Abba, Father. And we do, you know, translate Abba as Father. And but it's if you go more into the original, it gets a lot more dependent than just Father. The better translation is Dada, like a baby crying out. So if you think of how helpless a baby is,
how much they depend on him,
totally dependent on him, and it's having that heart. I can't do anything, Lord, help me. You know, I have the air to breathe because you've given me breath in my lungs. Knowing that's the dependency that we have on God, that brings your faith to the next level. Going, look, I've got faith that you're going to give me air in my lungs. I've got faith that you're going to give me another $200 next month. And he comes through. But there is power in having a dependent heart. It's not telling everybody to quit their jobs and just believe that God's going to do it. Do that if God's telling you to do it, but not as a test. But that's really, it's so inspiring to hear stories like that. Especially for those that might come across this podcast and you know, they're out of the job. I mean, we live in the world of COVID when most people got sacked in about 2 weeks. And to know, who do I cry to? You know, who do I cry to that I can actually depend on? And it's definitely Christ, you know, pour everything into God. And you'll be surprised, eh? And I would say, well, actually, I'm going to ask the question to you, Jono. What would be one of the biggest things for somebody who's got to the place of dependency and they're crying out for God? What is another step that they can take just to, you know, help that situation?
Yeah, I really think it's just like coming him to with everything that you have already, and it's a humble heart. You know, it's like, and it's acknowledging, and almost like you almost have to start off being thankful for what you have, even though you're in like the space of dependency. It's like, you know, I'm in this place where I really need God, but actually, you know, I'm thankful that I still have potentially a house over my head for the next night, you know, or, you know, I still have, you know, one more meal left, you know, And, you know, from gratitude, you know, and acknowledging like what God has already given you, you know, like that would probably be one place that I would, you know, like in the places where I've gone, you know, like, Lord, I need more funding, I need more this and that. And then I've completely forgotten already how he's already come through in the months for that for me, you know.
Happens, eh?
Yeah, and it's like, you
always
know, like,
focusing on what you need, not what you've been given.
Yeah. And it was like, I literally was doing this last night because I was like, some of my supporters have dropped off and stuff like that while I've been back here, which is like, I mean, it's understandable, you know, global economy and stuff. But, you know, I was praying last night. I was like, Lord, like, you know, I fly off to Malaysia and Europe in a month's time for a couple months and stuff doing ministry work. And I'm like, Lord, I don't know how I'm going to fund this stuff. And, you know, like some of my supporters aren't, like, I don't have as much as I would. And then I was like, actually, no, you know, thank you so much, God, that I'm actually back home, being able to visit my friends and family, having this like awesome time, seeing people again, being able to rest with you and things like that. And, you know, this morning, like, money came into my bank account. Like, no joke of a lie, you know.
That's awesome.
You know, and it's just like, you know, you could kind of see it as coincidence, but God doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You know, like, for whatever, like, the delay was, for whatever the, you know, extra stretching that you went through in that moment, like, it's to just basically strengthen your trust in him that he will continue to come through. Because if he continued to come through in the same way every time, you're not growing. Like, I mean, you know, you still have that level of trust with him, but it's going like, you know, he has so much more for you.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes like a hard thing to describe that, you know, like this life with the Lord is, you know, amazing and extravagant and like absolutely crazy and wonderful, but it is hard at times, like incredibly hard.
Yeah.
But as well as like remembering what our reward is, it's not just things on this earth, but it is eternal life with him.
It's so good. I got a good quick story before we end up finishing up, is on relying on God for a bit of money. We were praying about getting an intro done, which is the epic intro you guys heard at the start of this podcast. And it costs a lot of money to get an intro done because the artist, whoever does it, needs to release these rights to you. And it's really those rights, the lawyers and all that involved, to be able to release that. That's what costs. It's the cost of the lawyers more than the artist. And so that the artist can't come back and claim anything if whatever ended up happening with their piece of music, it now is released from them and they have no entitlement to it. So we've been praying about doing some sort of intro, and we're like, all right, Lord, how much is it going to cost? And it cost us quite a bit of money that we didn't realize it would be, way more than we thought it would be. So we're like, okay, well, and my beautiful wife and I, we just prayed. We said, Lord, if you want us to get an intro professionally recorded, supply the funds, and we'll do it. It was about 2 days later, we got a phone call, and somebody said, hey, I was just about to tithe this, but I think I might tithe this into the Jesus Magnet, and do you need this? And it was pretty much down to the dollar, how much we needed for this.
That's when you know it's God.
More or less. I was like, this is freaky. And this is when you said earlier, you said, God not only comes through, but he comes through more than you would
exceed your expectations.
He exceeds your expectations. So when you said that, I thought of this story, because 2 days after that, 2 or 3 days after that money came through, we moved from Christchurch and we drove to Nelson, and we started doing our ministry in Nelson. And we had been talking to this singer-songwriter in the States to develop this intro. And the person that we stay with in Nelson, we'd never met this guy before. He was a friend of a friend of a friend sort of thing. We stay with this guy in Nelson who has a full-on recording studio at his house, no joke, who now does that amazing intro that we just heard for free.
Yo. I get it. That's so good.
That's nuts, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Like, how can you can't orchestrate that kind of stuff.
You can't.
Only he can.
It gets better, though. All our gear breaks in the next couple of days. So we're going, what's going on, God? the perfect amount of money that we thought was for the intro and outro, purchase some more gear.
Yeah.
So it's like it all works out. Like it was crazy weird how we're going, okay, it's obviously for this, and then God's like, no, it's not. Sort of like supplying the next thing. And it's this constant walk of faith and trust that you keep thinking that you know what God's leading you. You just got to realize you got no idea where God's leading you, but just keep trusting Him because it's always good. And it was always good. Even disaster looked good. Yeah. So it's funny because you get to this point where disaster starts going, all right, well, God, what have you got out of this? You start getting to this weird point where chaos, you start kind of looking excited about it because you're going, all right, well, I'm going to see something cool in this storm. And this storm where this boat's rocking, where this earthquake's shaking, I'm going to see Jesus walking across this ocean to me. He's going to split the ocean. He's going to walk on it. He's going to teleport it. I don't know. But something cool's going to happen. And it's a weird place to be, and that's an unshakable place to be because the devil now can't shake you. He can shake you as much as he wants, but it doesn't matter because you know that God's always bigger and better and stronger. It's a weird place to be sitting. And you just remain content. Well, you sort of freak out from time to time, but... Yeah,
you kind of take a step back and you go like, did that all just happen?
Yeah.
Like it's a weird kind of, sometimes it's, that kind of surrealness of, is this just how God works in my life now?
It's true. It's true. Yeah. It's funny.
I mean, part of your story, it goes a little bit in hand with what I was saying before about if it's going wrong, it's going right because God's got you.
Absolutely.
And it kind of prompts a little bit of like more of my story of our time in Ukraine where we basically jumped on a bus. And so it was like the last bus of the day. We traveled to the city of Lviv, which is the biggest western city in Ukraine before you hit the border. And then we jump in a taxi, go to the next bus station. We missed the last bus of the day to the next city by a minute. And we're just like, and like last one of the day, it's about 5-6 o'clock. There's military curfew at about 9 o'clock. And so in my head, I was thinking like, oh, what's the worst that could happen? I'm going to go check into a hotel or something. And then it dawned on me that all of them are full because obviously everyone from the east has moved across.
Yeah.
And so it was very much like it might be end up sleeping on the street that night. But we ended up, I was hungry, so I went and got something to eat first. And then we eventually found a train. We jumped on the train at I think it was 7:30, 8 o'clock. And our destination was still 2 hours away. So we were going to be ending up in Ternopil, well after curfew. But this was kind of like God working in the details, working all those things for His good, where this train was split up into sleeper carriages, 6 per section. And there were 5 of us on our team. And the 6th person happened to be a Ukrainian soldier heading to the front line.
Whoa.
And so, we, through our translators, started chatting to him and, they asked if we could pray for him. And so, we did. And we found out that his son was already fighting at the front line and didn't look very good. And so, we talked to him. We shared to him about Jesus and he accepted Jesus into his life at that moment, and he felt just like he said to us through our translator, man, I just feel like this overwhelming peace that everything's going to be all right.
Wow.
And it's like, dude, you're going to a war, man. You're going to the front line, and it's like obviously to us, we're not fighting that war.
Yeah,
on the front line, obviously, but we're doing what we can to be there. But for this man that's actually having to step into those lines of fire and stuff, I hope in my lifetime I don't have to experience that. And probably being from New Zealand, I won't. But for him to say wow, I have this overcoming peace that God's got this, it's just it's, an understanding that, and a peace that surpasses understanding and a knowledge that surpasses all understanding. And it's that's one of the gifts that God gives us. And
it has to be, It's not normal.
Yeah, and it was because we missed a bus and had to take this train, and all because we were willing, know. A lot of people over there why are you in that? Why are you here? And we'd explain, God put it on our hearts to be here, to show that he loves you, to pray with you, to, do what we can to provide, if we can provide you with food, if we can provide you with transport, and that meant the world to them. Because they would hear a lot about international help and stuff, but they wouldn't necessarily see it there. And so for us actually being there, and it kind of comes back to that aspect and value of unity amongst diversity, it meant so much to them, and they saw God so much through us being there in that time.
Come on. Oh, that is so amazing. I'm truly inspired listening to everything that you've said, Jono. Very, very cool. Before we go, is there a way, do you have a link or something to Oceans Deep?
Yeah, so our website is oceansdeepministries.com.
Awesome.
And we have...
That will be in the description for anybody listening to this episode. And for you personally as a missionary, that was the word I was looking for. I was like, what is it? I know it's something. You as a missionary, do you have something that we can put in there, Patreon or buy me a coffee that we can go, I want to support you?
Yeah, I should probably set something like that. Most of my stuff's set up in the US via Venmo and Cash App and stuff like that.
Okay.
But otherwise you can donate through our ministry page.
Cool.
And me personally, if you wanted to be a supporter of me, drop me an email, which you'll also find through Oceans Deep Ministries.
Awesome.
And our newsletter sign-ups are there. My personal one will be up there as well.
Brilliant.
And I'm in New Zealand a lot, so I love to catch up with people back here for coffee and things like that, because, you can only capture so much in an update newsletter. Yeah,
and you went to your church just the other week, and you would have been sharing a lot about Oceans Deep. And so, we'll definitely put all that information if you want to, learn more about Oceans Deep and what Jono's doing, then go visit that. The description will be below. But thank you so much for joining us on the Jesus Magnet podcast. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Jesus Magnet podcast. If you enjoyed this, make sure that you connect with us. Find us on Facebook, on Instagram, and if you want to support us, be a member of our coffee club, Jesus Magnet Coffee Club. See you next time on the Jesus Magnet.